grief-stricken man with strange abilities opens up to his bereavement group about the death of his sister. He discovers that his curse becomes a gift to his fellow mourners. Hear now a conversation with Kyle Hatley about his film Marbles, the 2024 Oxford Film Festival Best Horror Short.
I'm Kyle Hatley. I am the writer and director of Marbles.
Now, will you tell me just a little bit about your film for the audience?
Yeah, sure. It's a short film. It's about a grieving man with strange abilities who finally opens up to his bereavement group about the death of his sister, and by doing so, he learns that his curse can become a gift to his fellow mourners.
I found this to be a very heartfelt film, and so it was sort of surprising to have that kind of experience with something that's billed as a horror.
Yeah, right, sure.
So it seems like that's a little surprising to you.
No, I appreciate hearing that. That's the idea. I mean, like, I think I connect more with horror that is, or rather genre pieces that are using genre to essentially talk about something else. Something like grief, for instance, with this movie. Something like, like one of my favorite movies is The Sixth Sense. Not just because of the twist. If you go back and watch that movie again, even if you know the twist, a whole other movie presents itself to you about a mother and a son. Same thing with something like Poltergeist. It's not just a family being tormented by ghosts. It's literally a story about motherhood and the sort of pains and losses and gains of motherhood. And when you know these things, kind of when they sort of reveal themselves to you in that way, I think it shows how flexible the genre is. Horror, I think, it can be fun and entertaining, like a haunted house, and there are movies that do that, the jump scare movies, etc., and they've got a place, and I love those too. But I think movies like The Babadook, also talking about grief, the way we can actually have hard conversations, but through a story. And ghost stories have for centuries been doing that with us. I mean, you can even look at something like Christmas Carol and talk about, you can't see major transformation without someone sort of facing their own identity, and by doing so, they have to face the ghosts of their past, the ghosts of their present, and the ghosts of their future, and like what all that means, both metaphorically and literally. Those have always fascinated me growing up. But I think humor, or horror with a heart, and horror with humor, but horror with a heart is what speaks to me most.
I heard you say at the Q&A after your film screened, you brought up The Sixth Sense, and how on a rewatch it feels different.
It does, yeah.
So watching your film on the big screen was actually my second time to see it, and I actually connected to it more than I did the first time. The first time it was good,
sure,
but then knowing everything and where it was going, I did see more of the sister. I focused more on the sister. And so I think that there's a level of intentionality that comes behind being able to make a film that is worth watching more than once. So thank you for that.
Oh wow, that's really cool. Thank you for saying that.
I don't really have a question. I just wanted
to but I hear you, because I mean, like, that's something that a lot of my friends talk about and filmmakers talk about. Like, right, like one of the things I learned early on is that watching is rewatching, right? Writing is rewriting, watching is rewatching. So your first watch of anything isn't a fair watch. Almost like the same, your first read of anything isn't the same. Like, I very rarely read a book twice, but I have. And the second time is always better and more profound. And I feel the same is true with movies. Like, it doesn't always mean, sometimes you can watch a second time and be like, well, that wasn't as good as I thought it was. You know what I mean? Like, that's true too. But I find that a second watch, or a watch years later after, you know what I mean? Like, I saw Sixth Sense twice in the theater the same day it came out. I was profoundly moved by that movie, and I immediately walked out and got a ticket for the next showing that I could get into, which was a couple hours later, and was able to call in a bunch of people to come meet me and go with me again. I was that excited about it. And I feel like even though I knew that, and yeah, the twist had a big part of it, but watching it, even then, I remember seeing something different. You know what I mean? I remember seeing these other things surface a little bit more that hadn't on the first part. And I really do believe that, like, when you, because my wife hadn't seen it recently, so we watched it recently, and in watching it recently with someone who hadn't seen it is also a reinvigorating experience, right? You almost get to see it again for the first time. So I found it the most moving I'd ever seen it, though, watching it with her, actually, because she was. We were pregnant with our first child, and so there's just a lot of emotion in our lives at the time. But also, we were just like kind of, doing whatever we wanted before the baby came. And this was one of those things where, like, we're just going to watch whatever movies we want to watch before this happens, etc. And it was my night, so I picked that one. But she fell in love with it too, even though she knew the ending. Because if you live long enough and hadn't seen the movie, everyone makes the joke about Bruce Willis and so forth. Yeah, I see dead people, etc. But I feel like even though there's a twist, there is just so much substance to it. So he was already on the right path before he discovered that twist. He just knew how to tell that ghost story. And I think that's what ghost stories do. The best ghost stories, I think, kind of tell a different ghost story than the one you think you're experiencing. So twists want to be kind of part of ghost stories sometimes, but I think sometimes they get a little too cute, or they try too hard, etc. And that's something I'm always worried about when I'm writing, or when I go see something. I don't want them to try too hard. I want it to all be worked out. You know what I mean? And have it all revealed before me as an audience member. But I'm also a very, very cheerful audience member. I'm already on the filmmaker's side before the movie starts, no matter what it is. I'm like, no, you're starting at a letter grade A with me, man. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
it takes something to make something.
Yeah, that's right. It absolutely does. And I feel like you do have to risk, and I think that's why some movies that are almost great aren't. So sometimes I have a hard time judging movies that get so close to it, you know what I mean? Or that some people don't like because they didn't quite land it. I get it. I totally understand, like, when people have that opinion. I get it. And it's my fear that I wouldn't land something too. But at the same time, film is so hard. And there's so much out of your control, that if you get close to a good movie, you've done better than almost every movie that's ever been made. You know what I mean? Like, most of the movies that have been made are not good, but they're still watchable. There's still stuff to have fun with and find. But we don't gravitate towards those. We don't watch those over and over again. The ones that I think move us are the ones that we watch over and over again.
Yeah, I heard Cillian Murphy talk about Oppenheimer and then movie making in general. And he said that a film is millions of little miracles. Tell me about the story of Marbles and maybe some of the miracles that happened for you.
There were a lot, because it was a frenzied production to begin with. And you were there on last night, so you heard me say this, but I can reiterate the pre-production story was a full court press. We were doing an entirely different story altogether about Russian roulette and the numbers in the game's design of Russian roulette, about putting your faith into something and not knowing the outcome, or thinking you know the outcome. Anyway, so the incident with Alec Baldwin and the Rust incident happened, and my producer and I just didn't feel like we wanted to go into full days of watching our friends put guns at their heads. So we pivoted. We sat down and we're like, I had a story idea in mind, but I hadn't written it. So I told her, like, give me a couple weeks and I'll put together a treatment and a script, a first draft, and I'll talk to the other, our people that donated money for one script and see if they'll be cool with us doing this completely different story. And so all of that happened in 2 weeks. But then by this point, we're about 3.5 weeks from production. So we got a second draft out a week after that. We rehearsed the actors one time for about 4 hours, which is a lot of time, but we didn't have the whole cast at that point. We were still casting as well. So, like, it was a full court press right up till we started shooting, because we lost a couple venues as well. We lost one, and then we decided not to do another one, and when we switched the story, we went after one of the first ones we'd gone with. So there was a lot of, like, back and forth and insanity. But then once we were in and shooting, we just made our days every single day that we shot. We shot this thing in 5 days, which wasn't a lot for everything that we had to cover. So a lot of what the actors' challenges were, they were facing only having 2 takes, 3 takes. But you know what? You wouldn't be able to tell watching it. Like they're the real heroes here. I would say the ensemble and the editor, they're the real heroes. So Richard and our editor is incredibly gifted storyteller himself, and I learned a lot from him. But also the actors, they had, they knew what they were doing coming in. They made choices that weren't in the script, that enhanced the characters, that helped us create a shorthand with them, because we don't have that much time with them, and give them some texture and some nuance, and make them feel like dimensional human beings that are suffering something, and trying to overcome that. That's a difference. They're not all suffering. They're also trying to overcome the suffering, which is why they're all there, right? And that's 2 different modes of presenting grief, I think. So that was kind of a challenge on all their parts. But yeah, we barely made our days. I mean, the last shot of the movie where the marbles are falling down, that was the last shot in the bereavement group sequence, and we were like 2 minutes away from being at our end of day. And we called action and just ran it, and we had about like 38 seconds left, and we just kept the cameras rolling and reset, grabbed all the marbles and did it one more time. So and I'm glad we did, because the second take was a better take. Things like that. There was just never really a time to breathe. It was all instinct and reaction and just collaboration, from beginning to end. It was all a blur. I barely remember it. You know what I mean? It's
5 days ago.
Yeah.
Fast.
Yeah, it was 5 days. Who knew?
Well, I guess my last question will be, why did you choose the Oxford Film Festival?
I'm new to the film festival world, and so I talked to a lot of friends who have done film festivals, and a couple of my friends had mentioned Oxford, and I immediately, my ears perked up. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee originally, and I have family in North Mississippi, and actually I've got some family around Oxford that moved here last year that I didn't know about. So it made sense. I looked into it. It looked like a really cool festival. The programming every year is super exciting. I've been to a couple panels. I just came from the firearms, the safety on set panel, which was super informative. But also what a speaker. I mean, he's a star witness on the Rust case. We had him here, and he spoke to us, and he talked to us about all the dangers and all the securities that you can, there was a real education going on there. So that's an immediate example that is still living in me right now, because I just came from it, of the caliber of festival that this is. So it was a no duh. We didn't know, we didn't think we'd ever get in. You know what I mean? We don't know. I don't know. So the fact that we even got selected is just a huge win for our entire production. But we were really glad, because it also created a chance for my wife and my son, who's never flown before, to fly home, meet the rest of his family, and they'll all take the family to go see a film festival. So it was kind of like my 8-year-old self is so happy with me right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I always wanted to be a filmmaker. It took a long time to get here, but
Since you were 8?
Yeah. I used to memorize lines from movies. I was an actor first, but I'd always wanted to write and direct. I wrote and directed movies in high school and stuff for school projects and things like that. I even did a little bit in college, and then got into theater. So I was a theater writer, director, and actor and producer. I also was an associate artistic director at Kansas City Repertory Theater for 7 years, before moving back to Chicago with my wife. And then I played bad guys on TV, and but I'm more interested in writing and directing. Yeah.
Anything that you want to give a shout out to?
Oh my gosh. I guess so. Yeah. I definitely want to. I have a great partner who isn't always brought up as much as she should be. But my producer, Jacqueline Larson, is just a hero. She is one of the people that made all of this possible, wrangled all of the minds on the project. And she's a super busy person with she's an executive producer for Smuggler in LA, which is a really kick-ass agency up there, and they do most of the commercials that come through your TV. She's had some hand in them one way or the other. So she's not always available to go to these festivals, but it's important that she gets mentioned. She's a huge partner in all of this. So any success we have with the film is just as much hers as it is the cast or our DP or our editor or myself or anyone else. So I would say my shout out goes to Jacqueline Larson and the Oxford Film Fest for having us, but also for having such an incredible festival. This is such a cool place. I wish I had a film every year just so I could at least submit and have an opportunity to come back. That'd be fun.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I know, it really is, yeah. I can't really keep up with it, but maybe every other year.
Well, thank you, Kyle, for your time.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.